I'm going to need to take it that a lot of you probably don't have that much of a background on Goldplat, and I'm going to start by just trying to give you a bit of background in terms of the industry that Goldplat Recovery is involved in, what we do. I think we've been defined as various things in the past. I'll state that at the moment we are an industrial processor providing services to the gold mining industry, present and past, and that we specifically focusing on providing an environmental solution for these industries on their byproducts or other contaminated material, through not just giving them an avenue to dispose of that material, but also to recover the final contained value, mostly in the gold industry, but also focusing more and more on the platinum business as well. We do have operations in South Africa, where the business started more than 30 years ago. We also have an operation in Ghana and looking to expand into South America with some prospects in Brazil specifically. I think if we go and break that down a bit more in detail, if we look at the slide currently, our clients is mainly blue chip gold producers, also as indicated, focusing on platinum. We also get material from refiners, and then also landowners who's got some areas or surfaces that's been contaminated by historical gold mining. The material we get from these clients includes anything from fine carbons, mill liners, which specifically is generated in the gold CIL plants. We also get contaminated wood chips, which comes out of the deep, specifically out of the deep mining in South Africa. We then also focus on various other gold-bearing products, specifically greases, plant cleanups, surface sources, as indicated from landowners that's been contaminated in the past, and really anything else that does contain gold, we're willing to look at. If we look at the processes we do follow, that includes milling circuits, jigging, cleaning circuits, gravity concentrators, wash plants, spiral circuits, rotary kilns, shot blast, flotation circuits, as well as the elution circuit. Now, most of that is quite standard in any gold industry. I think what makes us unusual is the fact that we've got various smaller circuits that we can utilize in different ways to be able to process different types of material. Mostly smaller batches that needs specific processes to recover the value. You do have a lot of big plants that focus on specific ore, whereby our focus is really a bit more niche in trying to recover gold, where it's quite a difficult type of material. If we look at the products we generate, that will be gold and silver doré, gravity concentrates out of our gravity concentration circuits, as well as other concentrates that we then deliver to smelters for final processing. I think I've already indicated that our focus is to provide an environmental solution for the gold industry itself. We're proud to be selected the Green Economy Mark issuer by AM, and it's also our focus to look at different ways we can assist the industry. We're still looking at opportunities in West Africa, specifically Ghana, to see if we can assist in terms of cleanup of the tailings that's being generated by the artisanal business. And that is still in discussion with government and other individuals and potential partners. We also focus on adhering to the London Bullion Market Association, focusing on making sure gold we procure and process is responsible, if we can state it in that way. And we also partner to Minamata in regards with mercury. I'm going to jump and talk a bit about the numbers that we have been delivering out of specifically just the recovery business for the last 4.5 years. And then I'm going to jump to the beginning, give you a bit of an overview. I assume you've got most of the data in the Stockopedia report that you've received, but I'll go over that detail as well. Now, I think before I go through these numbers, it's maybe just important to understand that Goldplat Recovery has been listed since 2006. When it originally listed, it listed as a recovery operation, which we currently are, and I've explained to you. However, the focus was to utilize the cash flow from this recovery business to really build a junior miner in Africa. And as a result, investments was made into Ghana, Burkina Faso, as well as Kenya, to explore and then to build junior mines. In the end, for a lot of different reasons that I'm not going to explain, we did expand on our investment in Kenya and developed a mine. And we did then about 3 years ago decided that we going to move away from that strategy and focus on specifically just the recovery business. The reality is the recovery business has been producing for more than 10 years, whilst the cash flow that went into the mining industry wasn't sufficient to be able to capitalize and actually achieve what we wanted to achieve. And we decided to discontinue that side of the business. And if you look at Goldplat today, basically we've been in a turnaround phase over the last 2.5 years, and we specifically focus on the recovery business in South Africa, expanding into West Africa and South America. And we'll talk a bit more in detail about that a bit later. Now, that is partly the reason why I want to give you an extract of what we have been doing and achieving just in the recovery business. In 2020, we actually written off about 5.5 million on discontinued operations, specifically when we entered into agreements to sell Kilima Pesa. We've written off a further 500,000 in 2021. And with that, everything is completed now, and the Goldplat business is merely a recovery business, focusing on the future. Now, if we look at the recovery operations over the last 4.5 years, we've generated operating profits before finance cost of close to 22 million pounds. I think from this, you can see that we've been producing on average close to 5 million on operating profit levels just from the recovery business. This now excludes group cost, taxes, and finance cost. And I think based on our current market capitalization of 12 million, you should already be able to see the value. I think if we look at what happened with the 22 million over the last 4.5 years, a lot of that has gone into the mining business as discussed. 6 million is already written down on discontinued operations. Some of that was on losses incurred in 2019, 2018. We've also spent 3 million pounds just over to acquire 16% of additional interest in Goldplat Recovery from a minority, increasing our interest from 74% to just over 90%, which is currently. And then we've actually built our working capital base quite strongly, and we'll talk a bit later as the reason to that. But that's currently sitting at a net level of close to 9 million pounds. If we go up quickly to the overview in terms of what we believe Goldplat Recovery offers to the investor, it's already clear from the recovery and the data I gave you that we cash generated with a clear strategy to build on the production from gold recovery operations, and then to what is important, to return value to shareholders. We started the program this morning on acquiring back close to 1.5% of the current share capital on Goldplat PLC, £200,000, which will stretch over the next couple of weeks. And we obviously are focused to continue in terms of looking at ways we can share cash generated or surplus cash generated to the shareholders. We've got a significant geographical reach. We operate across West Africa. We've done business in North Africa, Southern Africa as well. We have clients in South America currently sending material to our premises in Ghana, and we're looking to expand that base by establishing some processing ability in Brazil itself to be able to see if we can tap into the lower grade market in South America as well. I think we are making good strides at the moment in terms of diversifying into commodities. We're processing not just gold, but also PGMs, which is obviously important with South Africa being one of the biggest PGM producers in the world. As indicated, we're a niche recovery business. We've got experienced management team that's been with us for a long time, and that has learned the ability in terms of handling and processing the material with the plant we do have. I think important to note is that we have also, over the last 30 years, since 2003, we've established a tailings stock facility. We've done a JORC compliant resource on that facility in 2016. I think you can go and look on the website on 29 January 2016. You'll see the detail of that report. And basically all the material we've processed, we've stockpiled on a specific site containing roughly 2 million tons. At that point in time, it actually contained roughly 1.6 million tons, and that contains close to 82,000 ounces of gold that we're looking at processing in the future. And that facility is not currently sitting on our balance sheet, and that's an opportunity for the future, and I'll give you a bit more detail about that later. And in us moving away from the mining industry, we did sell our mine in Kenya, Kilima Pesa, to Caracal Gold PLC for interest in Caracal Gold, and currently we still have an interest of 5.67% after selling a portion of our interest a month ago for roughly $400,000. We also still maintain a net smelter royalty of 1%, capped at 1.5% in Kilima Pesa. Okay. Just a bit of detail, I'm sure you're aware of this. The share price, I think, probably ended just below 7p this morning or this afternoon. Our market capitalization is now just below £12 million. And in reality, our share have been moving between 6 and 8 over the last year, averaging around 7p. We do have one major shareholder in Martin Oy, owning 28.12%. He's also joined the board in October. And actually, the board combined probably owns over 35% directly or indirectly, with Sanga and Saluba owning 9.4% in our subsidiary in Goldplat Recovery specifically. Okay. If we then go down and just look at the two recovery operations by themselves, you'll see a picture of Goldplat Recovery in South Africa. The plant in South Africa is a lot bigger. The focus in South Africa also includes the processing of wood chip and surface source material. And for that, we require different types of CIL circuits. We've got 4 different milling and CIL circuits in South Africa that we combine in different ways to extract value from this material. In Ghana, we do not have a CIL circuit, and the focus is there really on the byproducts being generated in West Africa and South America from current operations. For the 6 months ended, Goldplat Recovery achieved steady and good results with operating profit of £1.9 million, and Gold Recovery Ghana achieved basically the same at £1.8 million. With Ghana's profits really increasing over the last 2 years, with good traction we have been able to establish in West Africa, specifically Mali. So if we look at the current key focuses and for South Africa, I mean, as I indicated, we've been a service provider to the mining industry for more than 20 years. And the main focus is obviously to maintain that presence and to maintain those relationships, and through that ensuring sustainability of sources to process. During the period we do have longer-term contracts with our key clients in South Africa, signing a contract for 3 years a year ago. And then we also are currently building a good stockpile of lower grade material to be processed through the CIL circuits in South Africa, with on-site value containing more than 2 years of production. We are currently diversifying even further into PGMs. We're investing about £300,000 into improved flotation circuit in South Africa, which should be completed towards the end of April. So it's soon. And the focus of that plant will really be in terms of processing the stockpiles we've built up over the recent past, which has justified us to put up the plant. And that will also give us the capacity to go out to the market and try and source additional material to process through there. It also will provide us some flexibility in terms of recovery on gold, potentially in the future. I've discussed the tailings facility with you already, but I think just to highlight, there's 2 to 3 things which is important for us to get to a point to reprocess this tailings facility. The one has been to establish a new tailings facility, because currently we're still depositing on it on a daily basis, and we should be able to get approval to construct that in the near future. If I say the near future, within the next week or 2, potentially. Once we move off the site, then we've got the ability to process the material, and to process it we will need a bigger and additional deposition site, and then obviously a plant to process it. I think if you look at the report released in 2016, it indicates that we can recover through normal methods around 15 to 20% of the gold contained in the TSF. We've done a lot of additional work with different results, and the focus really for us will be to try and process this material at higher volumes. And for that, we are looking at a third party, and there has been a submission for a pipeline to be able to move that material to a third party for processing. Now, the approval of that pipeline from Water Affairs in South Africa is probably going to take close to another 9 months, maybe a little bit longer, depending. And once we get that approval, it will give us the ability to complete the commercials, and then provide the market with additional information in terms of what the future value is potentially in processing the tailings facility or reprocessing the tailings. If we then look at Ghana, the focus there remains the same as in South Africa. establishing and retaining key clients to make sure we contain or receive resources. One of the things in Ghana that makes it different is the focus is there on different countries in West Africa. So it's not just engagement that we need to do with the mines itself, but also with the governments to be able to export and process that material. We believe that the current capacity in the plant is sufficient to handle in terms of what is available in the future. And then we are also looking at growing Ghana through establishing a plant or a partnership whereby we can go back into the processing of artisanal tailings. As I mentioned earlier, we have successfully done this in the past, and for specific reasons, we have stopped that. And we're looking at different ways of entering that market, specifically in Ghana again. Okay. Now, if we go and look at the numbers I've just shared and the sort of the background, and we look at the profits we've produced over the last 6 months, as indicated, I think profits from the recovery operations was roughly around 3.7 million, whilst the profit for the full group for the last 6 months has been 3.3 million. After finance cost as well as taxes, that 903 should actually be 789. The profit for the year from continued operations is 2,217 million pounds, 2.2 million pounds, and that gave us a basic earnings per share as well as diluted earnings per share of 1.19. And if I can analyze that, it will basically give us a PE of less than 3 based on the current share price. If we look at the previous 12 months ending 30 June 2021, that price earnings was around 5. And if we consider that at the moment our current assets at 29 million exceeds our total liabilities, including long-term, by 6 million pounds, I'm sure you can already see the value that there is in the recovery business now that we've exited mining. We've done the acquisition of the minority interest in South Africa for just over 3 million pounds in the current period, and we're really well set to continue providing services to the mining industry and generating these types of profits and cash flow going forward. In terms of the balance sheet, just something to add, we still have just around 3 million, yes, about 3 million pounds payable on interest-bearing borrowings, which relates specifically to the share buyback we've done in Goldplat Recovery, the subsidiary, to acquire back the 16% interest we had from the minorities. If we then look at going forward, I think the strategy and the focus will remain on securing sustainable sourcing of material, which we've already discussed. Obviously, the efforts in West Africa and South America is going to be extremely important. The investments we're making in PGMs is quite exciting, as well as then recovering the value from the tailings facility we have in South Africa, containing that 82,000 ounces. And then I think summing up all of that, we are going to need to build and keep our strategic partnerships in industry to be able to not just sustain but also grow the operations going forward. And I think it's important to also add that the intention is, as we've started today, to look at ways of sharing or the best ways of sharing any surplus cash being generated by these operations to the shareholders at the end of the day. Mark. I'm not sure if there's more time or whether we should go over to questions and answers.
We've got about 10 questions currently. If there's more that you'd like to say before we go into that, I mean, we've got half an hour available for questions.
I think there was just one thing I think that I wanted to add for the market's understanding. Obviously, we've invested a lot into working capital over the recent past. As indicated, we probably have a surplus there of close to 9 million. And that's been driven by, I guess, 4 factors, maybe 5. The one is obviously the increased business in the group, specifically in Ghana over the recent past. The second one is obviously with expanding the business into new territories and areas. We've been forced to pay more of the value up front. The second thing is that we haven't been immune to the supply chain impacts that has been experienced in the world specifically. And we also have certain supply chain issues in the countries we currently operate, in the harbors itself. And then in South Africa, as indicated, we are actively focusing on building a strategic stockpile for future processing or through our CIL circuits. As indicated, we've been able to increase that to more than 2 years. And yeah, I mean, for me, the benefit of all of this is that all of this net working capital is material that can be processed or that is in the process of being turned around into cash. Okay, Mark, I think from my side, there is nothing more, and it might be valuable to rather deal with the questions.
Right, thanks very much, Werner, for a very interesting presentation. We do have a number of questions from the audience, so let's run through those.
Okay.
At the top of the list are some questions from Mark Simpson. First, he asks, in today's buyback announcement, the company said it is the board's opinion that the company's shares currently trade at a significant discount to its intrinsic value per share.
Yes.
The recent BEE transaction gave a read-through valuation of GPL of approximately £20 million.
Yeah.
Does the board still consider this a reasonable intrinsic valuation for GPL? And also, GRG is now producing a similar operating profit to GPL. Would the board consider GRG to have a similar intrinsic value?
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for the question. I think what is for me, what is important to understand is that when we look at the value of the transaction, that we acquired the shares back in South Africa, obviously we were looking at 100% valuation of GPL, and at that point we only owed 74% of GPL. So that one consideration needs to be taken if you want to compare it to the group's valuation. The second one is that there is about 4.5 to 5 million pounds of debt that was outstanding from the group to Goldplat Recovery. And that also needs to be factored in if you look at the valuation itself. So you can't go and just translate the 20 million back to Goldplat PLC itself. That's the first thing. I think in terms of the intrinsic value, we are a service industry. I think we have been providing services, as I say, for a long time to the gold industry. And as long as the gold industry is there, obviously the intention is to do so. If we look at the profits we've been generating in the past, if we just look at the cash we currently hold, as well as the net working capital, I believe, for me, it's clear why we believe that the value of Goldplat PLC should be more than what we currently see. I mean, you also need to go and add, for example, the million plus value we still have in Caracal, in Kilimapesa. And yes, I think that whole transaction and deal has worked out quite well for us. If we look at the current share price of Caracal.
Thanks very much. Obviously, when one's working out intrinsic value, it's important that you do take into account all the factors that you've mentioned.
Yeah.
The next question concerns the prospective TSF reprocessing. Yep. Mark Simpson is asking about the recovery percentage. Economics, I presume the key issue there is sort of cost per ounce that you would anticipate, and the rough timeline that you think this can happen on.
Mark, I think, we've indicated the recovery percentages, I think in the report in 2016, saying it's between 15 and 20. Obviously, the material has been generated over a long time, processing different types of material, because that's the nature of our business. So we also have found different recovery values in our testing before. I think in terms of the economics, it really depends on the final process route we follow. And until that is not being established, it's difficult to give sort of a valuation to the market. Although we obviously have a lot of indications and a lot of models, we can't provide that if we can't give you a proper indication of where we're going to actually be able to recover that value. So, and that models also gives you different permutation. Some of it we can process on site. If we do so, that gives you a different valuation. So, yes, the focus is really on being able to get to a point where we can process it. The first step is close in terms of getting a new TSF approved. And then from there on, it's going to be easier to follow through on the remainder of the requirements.
Thank you. Then again, on the tailings project, in the past, the company has said getting a third-party processor would be challenging because they're not clean tailings, presumably because of the mixture that you just mentioned. What has changed to open up this possibility again?
I think we've indicated in announcements before that, firstly, we have submitted application for approval of a pipeline. And we wouldn't have done so if we didn't have an option through a third party, because that comes with different, obviously, certain evaluations that needs to be done to get to that point in time. And yes, I guess the focus has always been on our side on flexibility and utilizing resources or different types of setups to fit the purpose what we need. And I think we've got a potential setup that might work for us.
Right. So you have now identified a possible processor for
exactly
for the material. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to a question from Thomas Head. Why did the company sell the first tranche of GCAT shares, and will the company be selling the extra shares if or once the company shows 1.5 million ounces at Kilimapeza?
Yeah. I think the first answer to the question is quite easy. The intention was always to take the cash. We, for specific reasons, decided to take some of that in shares, and when we had the opportunity, we converted it into cash because we wanted to have some of the value up front. I guess the decision on terms of what we're going to do with Caracal going forward will depend on our internal situations, and obviously their situation comes the time when we're actually out of the lockup in terms of trading those shares.
Thank you.
Okay. I think just to add, Mark, if I can,
yes, of course.
To add is obviously our focus remains on recovery, as we've indicated to the market. So that's very important to understand. I think we do have the shares in Caracal based on the historical transaction, and that we will handle specifically around that investment, I almost want to say.
Yeah, so it's non-core, and obviously you want to maximize value from that investment. Thank you.
Okay.
Then a logical question concerning the buyback program that you've just announced and potential future buyback programs. Does Martin Rui's holding limit the amount you can buy back, without him crossing the 30% threshold? Or is there a whitewash resolution?
No, I think, firstly, at the moment, obviously that doesn't have an impact. And I think importantly so is we will do the best we can for all our shareholders at the end of the day. And from a board's point of view, if there's certain considerations or discussions to be had with the biggest shareholder, that needs to happen.
Okay. Then Thomas is also asking about repayment of the Nedbank loan.
Yes.
How you're planning to repay that?
Well, we're currently repaying it on a monthly basis, and obviously the term is 3 years. We do have, and we will consider to pay it sooner, and potentially converting it if there's any other reason to do so. But I think at the moment the intention is to pay it back if the opportunity presents, and pay it back sooner. Currently we're not really hedged, so we also need to factor in whether it makes sense to put all our capital to that at the moment, or whether there's different ways of utilizing it, like, for example, buying back shares.
Right, thank you. Then Thomas is also asking about debtors and inventory. I think you've mentioned that you're maintaining a higher level. What is the current supply chain situation? Are you finding it very problematic, or is it starting?
I don't think it's problematic. Well, let me say it different. I think it's not a problem that can't be solved. In the end, all we're experiencing is delays. So you end up having acquired material, and it takes it longer to get to the final processor. Our normal cycle in any case is long. A lot of the material we generate needs to go to smelters. The terms there might range anything from 120, even as high as 180 days, depending on certain factors. So if you then have supply issues up front, it can actually extend that for quite a long time. And obviously, the longer it is that you can ship it, it stays in inventory, you can't turn it, you can't generate profits from that material, or show the profits from that material. So yes, it's got various types of impacts in terms of the numbers, because profits we're seeing might relate to production 3, 4, 5 months back.
Right, thank you. Then we have a further question from Paul about the buyback program. He's asking for some more colour about the decision to progress with a share buyback versus other options for returning value to shareholders. What other options did you look at, and what future options are you considering?
Well, I think, there's different and a lot of different options you can look at. I think for different investors, there might be benefit in whether you declare dividends or do a share buyback. I think for us, the explanation is quite simple at the moment. We believe the best value for our shareholders is to buy back the shares at this price. And I think going forward, we will need to evaluate it. If the price resets to a certain level, we might decide to move to dividends. I think the important thing for me is that we've indicated to the market we're planning to distribute. We've done that, and it remains our intention as we generate cash flow or surplus cash flow to do that.
Right, thank you. Then I'll just slot in a question from myself, if I may. Can you tell us what your current AISC per gold ounce or gold equivalent ounce you produce is? Your cost per ounce?
Sorry, Mark, I didn't hear your question at all. For some reason, your screen just totally froze.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now, Werner?
Yes, I can.
Good. Sorry about that. Yes, I was just saying, can you tell us what your current AISC is per gold equivalent ounce that you produce?
Yes, Mark, I think that's the one thing I probably want to state. I think in the past because we've been part of and we're focusing on mining, although most of our revenue and profits came from the recovery business, the people tried to put us sort of in that sort of box, I guess. I think for us, we process a lot of different material. Some of it might be high grade with low recoveries. Some of it's low grade with higher recoveries. Some needs limited cost to recover the value. Some needs a lot of cost to recover the value. So our cost to produce an ounce differs significantly from contract to contract at the end of the day. And to try and establish that makes it quite difficult and confusing. And that's specifically why we're also not focusing on giving recovered ounces in our accounts.
Right. Okay. So it's complicated. Is sort of the short
yes,
answer.
I think yes, it is complicated. Yes, it is complicated, and you'll see that sometimes our revenue might be. I mean, the numbers I've shown you for the recovery business, the revenue might fluctuate up and down, but with that, your margin also changes. I mean, some lower grade material, you don't recover a lot of ounces, but your margin is a lot higher.
Right.
So yes, let's leave. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Moving back to delegate questions. So Mark Simpson also asks, in the H1 results, the company said the increase in precious metals on hand and in process was driven by high turnover volumes in Ghana, as well as delays we were experiencing on some of the shipping routes. Yeah. Can we expect a reduction in precious metals on hand in the second half, or is it likely to remain elevated?
Yes, I guess it's a difficult question to answer. It all depends on the, I guess the one I can answer is that I don't think the supply chain issue in the world is necessarily depleted. It's still there. So it's still something we need to manage, and we're looking at different ways of doing that. In South Africa, we do have more options. And then in Ghana, obviously, the intention is to try and source and process as much as possible. And if we do that, the values might be high, but you'll still have the cash from the first half coming through. So,
Right, thank you. And Mark also asks that reporting periods have been extended recently. I presume he means the time it's taken you to report due to the complexity of recent corporate transactions. Now that these transactions are complete, will the company return to a more timely reporting timeline?
Well, Mark, I think it's our intention to obviously get the data and the numbers through to the shareholders as soon as possible to make sure that they've got the ability to make the decisions they need to do. So I think from our side, we're obviously going to push to get back to the timelines we had in the past.
Thank you. Good. That I'm sure will be welcomed by shareholders. Then finally from Mark Simpson, in the first half results, the company said, sorry, just checking out, said the group's trading expectation for the remainder of the year is currently unchanged, which presumably means trading in line with WH Ireland's full year EPS forecast of 1.5p. However, the EPS for H1 was 1.19p. Can you explain what factors mean that the second half EPS is currently expected to be below that of the first half?
I think the comment has probably been made to indicate that at the point of that announcement, the activity in the group probably represented what we've experienced in the first half. I understand the question, but yes, I don't think there is necessarily at this point in time that expectation.
Yeah, so not necessarily expecting the second half to be significantly below the first.
No.
There's no particular reason to expect that.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's useful to know. Okay. There's one further question from Thomas, but I don't quite understand it. I don't know if it makes sense to you, Werner.
Okay.
Wasn't the net smelter royalty implied as a dividend?
Yes, I think the net smelter royalty that we're getting from Caracal or Kilimapesa specifically, obviously the intention is to look at distributing that back to the shareholders. I'm not sure if it was applied as a dividend or distribution. I think in the essence, what was important to state was that we will distribute that to shareholders in time. Okay,
one way or another. Thank you.
Yeah.
Then, so that's the end of the audience questions. There were a couple more things that I was curious about. The plants that you have at present, were those built by the company or were they acquired?
Mark, I think every bit of that plant was built by the company over time for specific reasons. So as we found different types of material needing different processing, we then added to it. So I think we've established quite a niche operation, and a lot of it has actually been incurred more than 5 years already ago. So a lot of it is sitting at quite a low book value at this point in time. The replacement value should be a lot higher.
That was sort of my next question, which I was interested in. Over time, roughly how much has been invested in those plants? Can you say?
Yes, I'll need to go and look. I can't say more.
Okay, as you say, they're quite heavily written down now in the books.
Yes, for sure.
Good, thank you. You also mentioned that the Ghana plant is not a CIL plant.
Yes.
Can you say a little bit about the nature of the processing that plant does?
The Ghana is focused on incineration, gravity, spiraling. We've got some kilns, some fluidized bed incinerators, and some other types of incinerators as well. So the focus is there really on cleaning up the material. And then most importantly, we also have a elution plant in Ghana. So we do smelt and we do generate bullion from some of the concentrates. So yeah, I mean, the focus is on taking byproducts, fine carbons, other trash material, as we call it. Actually, it's sort of a type of a wood chip material coming out of the plants, being screened out, as well as then liners and some other product. We also have shot blast circuits to recover gold from the liners. So yes, it's also quite extensive, and we're looking at different ways to add and expand to it. At the moment, it's not really capital intensive. And we don't really need to spend a lot of additional money in Ghana in the near future to do what we currently do.
Okay. Talking about Ghana, Mark Simpson's just raised another interesting question, which is, can you say a bit about artisanal tailings opportunities in Ghana? Is this a possibility back on?
Yes, I think, Mark, I mean, we have been sort of repeating the same comment to the market over the recent past. We are talking to potential partners in industry. The important thing is to get involved in artisanal tailings in Ghana. You're going to need to do it with the assistance of government, and potentially also with some sort of a partner. I mean, the important thing is you don't want to go and spend a lot of capital if you don't have certainty of a source of material. And in the end, that is being controlled by the government, and you are going to need some sort of a country partner as well.
Thanks very much, Werner. I think that just about wraps up all the questions. That was very helpful and very interesting presentation. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mark.